Hello everybody, Assalamu alaikum. How are you all doing? And we're back on with the live stream. And आज का जो topic है, we're going to be doing market failure, which is for IGCSE O levels. Hello, Assalamu alaikum, Maheen. Hope you're well. So, देखिए, before I start with market failure, I just wanted to let you guys know कि इसके ऊपर आपके पास किस टाइप के क्वेश्चंस यूजुअली आ जाते हैं, ठीक है, यानी इन द पास्ट 4-5 ईयर्स किस तरह के क्वेश्चंस आते रहे, और ये आता है, इस पर 2 मार्क की डेफिनेशंस भी आ रही होती हैं, इस पर 4 मार्क के क्वेश्चंस एक्सप्लेन भी आ रहे होते हैं, इस पर 6 मार्क्स भी आ रहे होते हैं क्वेश्चंस. जनरली क्वेश्चंस आपके पास, फर्स्टली a question could come where they could ask you to define a market failure. Number 2, they could ask you that what is the difference between, let's say, demerit goods or merit goods. They could ask you why are public goods not provided in a free market. You know, also in the past, इस type के questions बहुत commonly test होने लग गए हैं. For example, they could give you a question on discuss whether the social benefit of building flood defense. Now, flood defense is basically a public good, by the way. Flood defense will exceed the the costs involved. अब यहाँ पे social benefit का word use हुआ है, cost involved का word use हुआ है. आज की आप stream में सीखेंगे कि there's something that is known as social benefit and there's something known as social cost. तो ये discuss question ही market failure पे आया हुआ है. एक और question जैसा कि मैंने आपको बताया, क्या कहते हैं, difference between your merit goods and demerit goods, right? Uske baad another question is asking about analyze the social benefits of giving vaccinations. अब इस टाइप के जो questions होते हैं उसके अंदर basically you need to start off with defining what, for example, vaccinations basically merit goods है, so you need to start off by defining what merit goods are. देखें आप, वेन एवर यू आर अटेम्प्टिंग अ पास्ट पेपर क्वेश्चन, मैं आपको बस समझा देता हूँ. सपोज करें ये आपकी आंसर शीट है और ये क्वेश्चन है, लेट्स से एनालाइज द सोशल बेनिफिट ऑफ गिविंग वैक्सीनेशन. तो ये 6 मार्क्स का क्वेश्चन होगा. कोई भी आपके पास पेपर क्वेश्चन आता है स्पेसिफिक, स्पेशली जब हम जैसे 6 या 8 मार्क के क्वेश्चन, 6 मार्क्स के क्वेश्चन की अगर बात करते हैं, सो आप इसको 2 हिस्सों में डिवाइड कर देंगे अपने आंसर को. पहला पार्ट होगा assessment objective 1, which is knowledge and understanding. So you'll be defining what the topic is asking you. So if the topic is coming from market failure, talk about market failure. Vaccinations is the merit goods, we'll talk about merit goods and why probably are merit goods not being that much provided. And then the question says analyze the social benefits of giving vaccination. So social benefit की definition देंगे. So for IGCSE and O levels, basically assessment objective 1, that is knowledge and understanding, is primarily your definitions. तो आपका जो opening paragraph होता है वो generally आपके उस जिस topic का question होता है उसको define कर रहा होता है, उसके बारे में information दे रहा होता है. Knowledge and understanding means that what do you really understand about the topic basically. उसके बाद जो 6 markers में next step होता है, that is about assessment objective 2, which is analysis. और analysis is basically an in-depth explanation about what the question is asking you. So analyze the social benefit of giving vaccinations. You need to talk about how vaccinations is going to result into social benefits. And इसमें ये होता है कि, for example, if you're saying that इस चीज़ से if something leads to something, then it's a process. For example, if I say that taking YouTube live streams would be beneficial for your O-level exams results, then how is it? So coming up with a proper chain of analysis is what analysis is all about. Connecting the dots and then giving reasons and just giving reasons and explanations for why would that happen. So analyze the social benefit of giving vaccinations. उसके बाद आपके पास थर्ड होता है evaluation, assessment objective 3. लेकिन evaluation का जो assessment objective होता है, that is basically in 8 mark questions, not in your 6 mark questions. देखिए आपके जो answers होते हैं ना, they are based on, for example, किसी भी student को मुझे 8 में से 6 देने हैं या 8 में से 7 देने हैं, 8 on 8 देने हैं या 6 में से 5 देने हैं, ये कैसे डिसाइड करूँगा मैं? ये डिसाइड होता है बेस्ड ऑन हाउ वेल यू हैव सेटिस्फाइड द असेसमेंट ऑब्जेक्टिव. Assessment objective means that is the criteria or the benchmark based on which that needs to be satisfied for every question that is being asked. So for 6 mark question, the assessment objective that needs to be covered is only knowledge and understanding and analysis. 8 marks के अंदर you need to come up with evaluation as well. ठीक है. Conclusions are generally not required for IGC at IGCSE O levels. However, if you want to give it for, let's say, a question or so, then you can, right? There's no harm in it, but there's no separately attached mark for it. However, there's something that is known as and this is not usually said out openly, but कुछ marks होते हैं वो आपके इनफॉर्मल मार्क्स होते हैं, हिडन मार्क्स होते हैं. आई मीन ये ऑन पेपर नहीं होते, ये होते हैं, ठीक है. एवरीवन नोज अबाउट इट कि ये हिडन मार्क्स होते हैं, समथिंग इनफॉर्मल मार्क्स होते हैं, मतलब दे आर नॉट ऑफिशियली ऑन पेपर बट ये होते हैं. मे बी द एग्जामिनर could possibly give you 1 or 2 more because based on the fact that you have ended up writing such a good answer. So maybe conclusion भी आपने दे दिया. So ज़रूरी नहीं है आप conclusion सब में दें, but let's now come back to the topic. हम possibly live stream past papers के लिए अलग से रख लेंगे. I think let's focus on the topic right now. And उसके बाद फिर we gonna be फिर किसी और time हम we'll be more focused on how do we attempt देखें past papers and all of that. तो ये continue तो रहेगी live streams as you guys know. Market failure, देखिए market क्या होती है? Market is basically a place where buyer and seller conducts an economic activity. So for example, market is which sort of brings the buyer and the seller together. And when you say that it brings the buyer and the seller together, it's basically what you're saying is that the buyer wants to buy something while the seller is selling something. So the buyer is buying something at a price that the seller is selling at, he's comfortable selling at. And so we say that, we say that in a market, the economic activity of trade and exchange that takes place is something results into efficient outcomes because it satisfies both the buyer and the seller at a price that satisfies both the buyer and the seller. I mean, the buyer is willing to pay that price for that quantity while the seller is willing to sort of sell that quantity at that price. So we say that markets basically result into efficient outcomes, right? And one of the key characteristics of a market economic system of free markets is that it results in efficient outcomes because of the way the free market operates. And when you talk about free markets, I mean, free markets are efficient. When you say that we're talking about free markets, we know that free markets are very efficient. Firstly, you need to understand that when आपका जो economic system होता है, economic system का मतलब होता है आपका मुआशी निज़ाम, आपका how is your economy run, right? आपका एक political निज़ाम होता है, आपका एक economic system होता है, right? And actually, political system is very much has an influence on the economic system and how economics is done in your economy, because the political system does influences different variables across the economy. Now, point being, coming back, कि इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम आपका माशी निज़ाम है, टॉक्स अबाउट हाउ रिसोर्सेज एलोकेटेड, क्या बनेगा क्या नहीं बनेगा, कितना बनेगा, किस क्वांटिटी में बनेगा, कौन सी इंडस्ट्रीज़ को हमें इस साल बेनिफिट, कौन सी इंडस्ट्रीज़ जो हैं वो कितना आउटपुट बनाएंगी. एंड मे बी द एजुकेशन सिस्टम नीड्स टू थ्राइव मोर, और मे बी द स्टील इंडस्ट्री नीड्स टू produce certain amount of steel in an economy, and what prices would the steel be made at and sold at, how many shoes will be produced and sold in a market, and how many cars will be made, and how many bikes will be made, how many laptops will be made, and how much food will be available in the economy. Now, all these decisions are important decisions, and all these decisions would be sort of taken in a free market by the price mechanism. Now, बच्चे लिख कर आते हैं कि these decisions are taken by the private sector. ठीक है, I mean, you're right. But a better way of saying is that they are taken by the price mechanism. I mean, the price mechanism takes care of all this. Now, in a market economic system, जहाँ पे आपकी पूरी economy का निज़ाम जो है, that is basically determined based on, देखिए, मार्केट इकोनॉमी एक ऐसी इकोनॉमी होती है जहाँ पे सारी मार्केट्स, चाहे वो स्टील इंडस्ट्री हो, food industry ho, maybe the market for shoes or bikes or bicycles or laptops or education or health, they are basically the resource allocation is done by private individuals and firms. And how? Through the price mechanism. The private individuals and firms are allocating resources through the price mechanism. Primarily, what do you mean by private individuals and households allocating resources through the price mechanism? What you mean is that, the system of the price is inherently and उसकी जो functionality है price mechanism की, वो इस तरह से designed है कि प्राइस जो है वो आपको गाइड करती है और सिग्नल करती है कंज्यूमर्स को भी, प्रोड्यूसर्स को भी, अबाउट व्हाट हैज़ टू बी मेड, हाउ मच, एट व्हाट प्राइस things have to be sold at, how much has to be made. And ultimately, the price mechanism leads markets to an equilibrium, to a stable equilibrium where both the consumers and the producers are happy with whatever they are producing and selling. So you don't really have, I mean, the price mechanism will tell all the producers of shoes in Pakistan that, okay, fine, this much is the demand for shoes, while this much is the, I mean, if this much is the demand for shoes, then this much is the demand for shoes at that particular price. So let's look at the price. If this seems like a good price, then we can actually end up producing this much shoes to satisfy all the demand at that particular price, which is actually your equilibrium, basically. And so you see how the price mechanism is guiding both the consumers and producers how much to buy and how less to buy, and that results into efficient outcomes. And that's why we say that markets are efficient and a free market economy is. देखिए free market economy में सारी markets efficient होती हैं, but अगर आपका economic system mixed economic system है, where you also have the state or the government that is involved in resource planning and resource allocation and making plans and allocating resources, then not all markets are firstly free markets. And the government is also involved in the resource allocation and the planning process. जब हम free market economy की बात करते हैं तो one of the good examples is the US economy, United States की economy. देखें free market economy में का मतलब ये नहीं है कि government intervention नहीं होगी. देखें ये सब कुछ जो मैं आपको पढ़ा रहा हूँ ना, ये market failure का background है, जो कि बहुत important है. बगैर इस background के आप market failure को समझ नहीं सकते. सो फ्री मार्केट इकोनॉमी जो होती है उसका मतलब ये नहीं कि गवर्नमेंट इंटरवेंशन नहीं होती. गवर्नमेंट इंटरवेंशन होती है, लेकिन वो बहुत मिनिमल होती है. मिनिमल से मतलब है गवर्नमेंट बहुत बेसिक लॉज बनाएगी कि कितने वर्किंग आवर्स होंगे, बेसिक वर्किंग कंडीशंस, 9 to 5 वर्किंग होगी, सैटरडे संडे छुट्टी होगी. इसको कहते हैं लाइट टच रेगुलेशंस. क्या कहते हैं? लाइट टच रेगुलेशंस. अगर लिखने की ज़रूरत इसको नहीं है, ये कोई इतना इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है आपको समझना, या पता होना ज़रूरी भी नहीं है, लेकिन पता हो तो ठीक है, नॉलेज बढ़ती है आपकी. Point is, what I'm going to say to you is that market economic system is an economic system जहाँ पे सारी markets free होती हैं. तो आप और government intervention minimal होती है. Governments basically, I mean, economic growth, economy को grow करना, GDP को produce करना, primarily किसकी responsibility होती है economic system के free market economy में? Private sector की. So who is responsible for producing? So who is responsible for sort of producing goods and services? Who's responsible for producing goods and services that are you guys there with me? I mean, are you guys listening? समझ आ रहा है सबको? ज़रा प्लीज़ मुझे ये भी क्लियर कर दें कि are you guys all there and are you guys following to what is being sort of said? Right? Everyone is with me? जी. सो बेसिकली हम जब ये बात कर रहे होते हैं कि मार्केट इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम जो है वो प्राइमरीली फोकस कर रहा है, मार्केट इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम आपका प्राइमरीली फोकस कर रहा है ऑन it's primarily focusing on your resource allocation being the most efficient way. Primarily what you're saying is that you're giving the private sector full privilege and full advantage, and you're actually what you're doing is that you're giving full privilege and authority to the private sector to produce goods and services, or whatever sort of goods and services they want, whatever prices they want to sell at, whether they want to do this or do that. The government doesn't really have a say in it, and the government doesn't really wants to have a say in it. The reason why it doesn't want to have a say in it is because it wants the private sector to foster economic growth and economic development in society, because it believes that the private sector is more efficient. And we've seen that in the past, economies have been market economies, and there has been, a shift in the 1970s there has been a shift of a lot of economies and countries moving towards a market economic system, but that too really failed, because a 100% free market economic system is not really viable and economically desirable as well. And the reason why 100% market economic system is not really desirable is because a market economic system where you say that the government intervention would be minimal could result into various threats for the desirability and the welfare of society, and it could result into outcomes that are publicly undesirable, that are not really welcomed by society. For instance, one of the reasons that and so then what solution do we have? What is the solution that economies now have? And so the solution that economies now have is to have a mixed economic system. But you see, मैं आपको एक बात बता दूं कि even if you have a mixed economic system, the focus of the mixed economic system is more towards the market economic system. You have a mixed economic system where the government could intervene as and when it wants, and it could also produce whatever it wants, and the government could maybe provide education and give welfare benefits to people, and the government could be responsible for operating the airport of the economy, or the steel mill of the country, or providing responsible for public transport and all of that in a mixed economy. But the point is that still the focus of a mixed economic system is more towards a market economy, and the government would intervene as and when needed to correct market failures. And that brings us to the discussion of today, that we need to actually study what exactly what market failure is, and we need to study कि भाई मार्केट फेलियर क्यों होता है. और अगर हम ये कहते हैं कि मार्केट इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम इतना ही एफिशिएंट है, तो सोसाइटीज़ ने मार्केट इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम को जब अडॉप्ट किया तो उसको कंटिन्यू क्यों नहीं कर पाए? क्यों मार्केट इकोनॉमी जो है वो अल्टीमेटली फेल हो गई अपनी बेसिकली अपने क्या कहते हैं मार्केट इकोनॉमीज़ जो उनका जो नैरेटिव था कि would result into more economic growth and higher GDP and more output and more wealth and incomes, why did it really fail to create a society that was more equal and more equitable? Because one of the reasons why market failure occurs is because a free market economic system is not, one of the reasons why the government intervenes is because the free market economy is not really resulting into an equitable or an equal sort of a society, and plus the distribution of incomes are not really equal. We see that there's a huge disparity of incomes between the rich and the poor. We see the upper income groups and people who have strong bargaining powers and higher socioeconomic status and who fall in the upper income levels, they always have access to good education, good health, good cars, good house. And so the economy is sort of stuck into a cycle where the rich would keep on getting stronger while the poor would keep on getting weaker. And the only way we could have a just and a more equitable system is through government intervention, where the government has some control over what the private sector, in fact, it could have significant control over what the private sector is doing, not just having light touch regulations as what the market economic system says. And so that brings us to the topic of today, that we need to study about what market failure is. And when we say that markets are very efficient, yes, they are efficient. But just because they're efficient does not really means that they are, desirable as well, right? Just give me a second right now. Just give me a second. Can you all see my screen? अच्छा, मुझे कंफर्म कर दो मेरी स्क्रीन नज़र आ रही है सबको? You guys can see my screen, right? अच्छा जी. Just a second. एक second, guys. Just give me a second, please. Okay, so we're back. Okay, so we're back. Now can you guys see my screen back again? Everyone? Okay, so basically, right, you guys can see the screen, right? Nazar aa rahi clearly. Okay, so hum primarily okay, so we're back. I mean, the reason what we're saying is that you need to understand जब हम market failure की बात करते हैं, the reason why we are saying that markets are failing and they're not able to generate an efficient outcome is because we're actually criticizing the free market economy and the free markets in itself. That the premise on which the free market system is based, which is the price mechanism, that how prices are, an efficient way of allocating resources. We say that prices are an efficient way, but they're not necessarily a desirable way to, allocate resources because, prices perform various functions like signaling function and incentive function. And when you say that prices perform various functions, what you're saying is that prices signal producers and consumers and what markets are really profitable right now, and prices also signal consumers, as in they tell the consumers about the value of the good. If the prices are probably rising, they would signal consumers that consumers are demanding the product and it's getting short, because if demand बढ़ेगी तो shortage create होगी market में. that would indicate the value and the relative scarcity of the good. कि bhai, the good is scarce in the market and there would be an upward pressure on prices. Market prices would start rising because of that. And what will happen is that again, ये signal जा रहा है consumers को that they should sort of do something and they should start quickly buying the product. But this shortage would also signal producers that they should start producing the product as well. And so because there would be an upward pressure on prices, there's an incentive to produce now for the firms. Now there's no harm in it. There's no harm in this sort of a system. And the system actually balances consumers and producers so well that, you know, the price the consumers pay versus the price the producers receive, we say that it's an efficient price because at that price, whatever quantity is being produced and sold is actually the quantity that consumers want, and they're willing to pay that price, while producers are actually happy receiving that price as well. So it sort of balances the consumers and producers, and it ensures that there's no shortage or surplus in the markets, and the markets are efficient and they maximize consumers and producers gains, right? Or welfare gains, basically. But the problem is that this price mechanism, I mean the price itself, is coming from how consumers value the product and how producers value the product. The price is coming from how consumers value the product and how producers value the product. And when you say that how consumers value the product, consumers don't really know how to value the product as they should. For example, if you really think that education and healthcare and fitness and vitamins and good stuff, consuming good stuff is really good for your health, then pay double the price, and probably the producer should also be producing them 3 times more. And the world should be consuming, and every one of us should be going to the gym every day, having a healthy meal every day. But we don't, right? Because and we don't, right? Neither do we end up paying a lot for education, and a lot of investment that goes in education is not to the extent that it should, right? And for instance, if let's say you would want to enroll in some course, probably you might not, because you'll think that, it's really high priced, and that price wouldn't give you, the value that you'll place on that course wouldn't sort of be something like as in the value that you think that the course will provide to you would be some sort of your own distorted reality that, okay, fine, you won't really be able to figure out how beneficial something could be for you. And neither would you be able to get those true benefits. Neither the producers would be able to get those true benefits, because the producers also won't really produce to an extent where, to the extent that they think would be consumed by consumers, because they themselves know that the consumers would end up under consuming them. So the market will always provide some goods that are under consumed and underproduced, and the market will always provide some goods that are always less than what is socially optimum, right? So what we're saying is that the way the price mechanism functions is efficient, but it's not desirable. And the reason why we're saying it's not desirable is because the price mechanism creates certain outcomes that are that results into either some goods being overproduced and overconsumed, which are demerit goods, while some goods being underconsumed and underproduced. And that sort of brings us back to the topic which we are starting right now. that जब हम market failure की बात करते हैं, so market failure is basically a misallocation of resource, right? It's a misallocation of resource. Or you can say that the society is creating a suboptimal outcome, right? It's not creating an outcome that the society really wants to have, right? Because you see, I mean, do you really think that the world is in its the best state right now? No. Because the market, because even though we have mixed economies all around the world, except for some countries, maybe let's say North Korea, or maybe Cuba, but still, we don't really have, despite that, we do have a mixed economic system. Still, like I said, the more focus is on market economies, right? And so the free market economics is not resulting into optimal outcomes for society. We have a lot of problems, like we see poverty, we see a lot of unemployment, we see disparity of incomes, we see monopoly exploitation, we see climate change, we see undesirable weather outcomes, extreme weather outcomes. And you see, climate change is, मैं अगर उर्दू में बोलूँ तो एक जीती जागती मिसाल है about how free market economics has destroyed the world. Climate change is basically the manifestation of market failure, in a way that how industrialization has resulted into corrupt societies giving a shit about the environment and doing stuff because of their own personal selfish reasons. And that's where market failure kicks in. That is exactly what market failure is, right? That market forces result into a misallocation of resource in society because it creates an undesirable outcome. Because you see, although free markets efficient hoti hain, because free market systems efficient, free markets aapki efficient hoti hain for two reasons. Allocatively bhi hoti hain, productively hoti hain. Why are they allocatively efficient? Because they create what society wants. They don't consider the fact that whether society wants demerit goods or maybe harmful goods, they'll end up producing it. Because so allocative efficiency ki definition hai that those goods are being produced which are preferred by society. So society really wants them. Now the problem is that society itself doesn't really know what it really wants and how beneficial something could be because of information failure. And that's why market failure, we see that there's market failure, right? So, and productive efficiency ka matlab hai that you're producing it at the lowest possible cost. So allocative efficiency means that you're producing what is most valued and what is more valued and preferred for society and what consumers really want, basically. Society mein consumers ki baat kar rahe hain. Where productive efficiency is talking about producing it at the lowest possible cost. So it's basically resulting into socially inefficient outcomes that is necessitating government intervention. Right? So when the allocation of resources via the price mechanism fails, it creates a welfare loss in society. That's when we say that the society is getting worse off, and that's resulting into an allocation of resource in an undesirable way that's creating market failure. Right? So basically जब आप बात करते हैं market failure की, तो आप बोलेंगे कि market failure का मतलब होता है that the market forces fail to create desirable outcomes for society. That is, a demand and supply mechanism although a demand and supply mechanism is very healthy and efficient, but then it's undesirable. It can be undesirable, or it is, for the most obvious reasons. It creates into an unhealthy, undesirable allocation of resource where three things will happen. Three primary market failures hain aapke. What are those three primary market failures? That the price mechanism will the price mechanism will create three major issues. Number one, it will either overprovide those goods that are harmful, because the price mechanism says, oh, fine, there's demand in the economy, people want something, they're ready to pay for it, and the demand for something is going up, and so is the price. And the price reflects the value that people place on it. And if people really want to consume unhealthy food, they want to consume fast food, they want to consume crispy fried chicken full of oil, fine. We are most welcome. We'll do that, right? And we'll charge huge, hefty amounts on that crispy fried chicken because the price reflects the price reflects the value people place on it. Now, while this is very efficient because people get what they want, so in that context, it is efficient. But then, is it really efficient from the perspective that of your long-term stability? Do you really think it's going to create a healthy outcome for? No, you'll have people ending up in hospitals. Aap dekhen, when you grow up, you'll end up having cholesterol, and then probably you'll end up dying earlier, and there would be a huge strain. There would be a huge pressure on your healthcare systems, which probably a developing poor country might not be able to sustain. And this is all external cost. These sub-demerit goods ki external cost. These sub-external cost. I'll address the question in a while. Okay? And so what we're saying is that either too much will be produced, too many goods will be produced that are harmful, or maybe too less beneficial goods will be made. ऐसा क्यों है? कोई भी country आप उठा लें. Do you really think that countries are producing, you're exporting cigars and you're exporting alcohol and you're doing gambling and you're doing, there's a lot of prostitution taking place and there's all sorts of things happening that is all demerit goods and harmful, but then there's money and wealth involved. And because there's money and wealth involved, then fine, the market economics says, good, fine, go ahead. We have a green signal. But again, is it really creating healthy outcomes? Is it really creating? But that's when economists say that these markets are failing. And is it really creating efficient outcomes? You need to think twice about that. So while demerit goods might be overprovided, merit goods like merit goods like healthy food, healthy education, education, healthcare, health and fitness, having your vitamins and everything that has to do with society improving, not only society improving overall, will be underproduced and underprovided by the market mechanism or the market economic system. Or number 3, there's a complete missing market. मतलब market ही नहीं है उसको कहते हैं public goods की missing market है, right? And also the free market economics, since the free market economics is based on the principles of making wealth and profits, we see monopolization taking place. We see some firms being so dominant that they start exploiting consumers, and they start exploiting consumers by overcharging them, and that's when they abuse their monopoly power. And we see that some firms end up making cartels, and they collude, and they create these artificial barriers that prevent competition from happening. And so for example, one of the example, for example, why did Meta ended up buying WhatsApp and all? Because it wanted to end competition, and then it just Meta controls things. And there's a lot of literature that you can read on it on Google, and these Google, Microsoft, and Meta has been blamed on a lot of reasons on somehow stopping competition, so that because competition creates efficiency and consumer sovereignty, where consumers really have a choice. But do we really have a choice? No, we don't really have a choice. Actually, we don't really have a choice. How our lives are dominated by social media and how they're controlling our lives. And so this goes on. And when you see that economics is not just in the books, economics is all around you. Anyways, I could just go on and on talking about that, but we don't have a lot of time. So let's get back to textbook knowledge. I think question I have, if monopolies form, how is that beneficial for consumers? You said free market is always beneficial. So monopolies are not necessarily harmful. Monopolies by definition or by inherently, they're not harmful. Meta is also dominating. It's also has monopoly influence. But it's not it's harmful to an extent, but then it has its own benefits as well. So just because you hear the word, अच्छा ये एक गलती नज़र आती है एग्जाम में कि मोनोपली का वर्ड सुनते ही हमारे जहन में आता है, ओ मोनोपली बैड, करप्शन, something is bad. Monopoly is the bad guy. Monopoly is the evil in society. It's not that. Monopolies are harmful, or monopolies are beneficial because they are large organizations that have huge funds, and if they work for the good reasons, and they invest in research and development, and they come up with they come up with some sort of a cancer cure, or they invest in R&D, and because of that they come up with some technological breakthrough, definitely they will create healthy, sustainable outcomes for society. For example, AI is a breakthrough in society, right? And so it's not that monopolies are always bad. It's just that monopolies could be bad if they abuse their market dominance in a way that they give a damn about society and they start focusing on their own selves. They could do that, and they have been doing that, and that's why we say that there are monopoly laws, इनको हम कहते हैं antitrust laws. For example, Pakistan में we have the Competition Commission of Pakistan. The Competition Commission of Pakistan is responsible for regulating monopolies all around in Pakistan, basically. So primarily monopolies are not harmful by nature. They could be harmful if they exploit. और अभी हम इसके ऊपर बात करेंगे. So the point of view is that firms are efficient and beneficial. The reason why they're efficient and beneficial is because देखिए, जब हम ये कह रहे हैं ना efficient हैं, we're actually comparing and contrasting it with the public sector. Because how does the government operate? You see, how does the government operate? The government creates 5-10 year plans. They say, okay, fine. In the next 5 years, these much schools will be made, this much will be produced and generated from food or the health industry, let's say, or maybe bicycles will not be made because we don't need bicycles. Let's forget that. for example, let's talk about schools. Schools may, we're Pakistani people, so we're really backwards, and technology shouldn't be there in schools. So forget technology as well. We'll have teachers who will teach on blackboards and forget iPads and everything. So the government could end up doing that, and the government does that. Not this example, but then what I'm saying is that the government creates the 5-10 year plans where it decides, again, market economic system mein ya free markets mein, if the demand for something is going up, the price will rise. If the demand is falling, the price will fall, because price reflects the value of the good and the relative scarcity of the good as well. If something is provided by the government or the public sector, the prices won't fluctuate like that. The government fixes the prices. This is the price of maybe this particular medicine, or this is the price of this is how much we will charge from people who are coming in our schools and all of that. So government follows the books and the plans that it makes. The central authority makes these 5-year plans that deal with how much will be produced by each and every industry in the next 5-10 years, and then it follows that. And one of the disadvantages is that it creates inefficiency, because the world is changing and it doesn't really adapt to the dynamic global changing environment. But price mechanism is efficient because it adapts, right? If something is low in demand, firms would exit that market, especially if the markets are declining, and they would start producing those goods that are in demand, right? So the private sector schools have soon realized that probably teachers need to come and shift to technology and learn how to use AI. So probably in the next 5 years, we'll start seeing that probably schools might be doing courses on maybe training the teachers on how to use AI and how to leverage technology in their teaching and all of that. So basically what I'm trying to say is that when we say that markets are efficient, that's what we actually mean, that there's a reallocation of resource from unprofitable markets to profitable markets. While because in free markets, firms produce what consumers want. But in a planned economy, or an economy where resources are basically guided by the governments or the public sector or the state doesn't really produces what consumers want. It produces what it thinks would be beneficial for consumers, right? So this is the primary difference, and that is why we say the private sector is more efficient. This is what we actually mean when we say the private sector is more efficient. But the problem is that yes, it is efficient, but it may create undesirable outcomes. हम merit goods की बात करते हैं, ठीक है? जब when we talk about merit goods, let's say when we talk about so what I've written is that देखें, why are demerit goods being overproduced and why are merit goods being underproduced? The reason or underconsumed. The reason has to do with, number one, information failure. There's a lot of information failure out there. And when we say that there's information failure out there, we mean that, number one, there's information failure. And number two, there's failure to take into account the external cost and benefit. So the private sector firms and the consumers and producers do not take into account the external cost and benefit. अब आपको मैंने past paper के जो questions दिखाए थे, ये वाले, इसमें they were talking about social benefit, they were talking about external cost and external benefit, they were talking about the difference between merit and demerit goods. अब generally बच्चे जब merit और demerit goods की definition लिख कर आएंगे या difference लिख कर आएंगे, तो they'll talk about demerit goods are harmful while merit goods are beneficial. Probably they'll give an example, but they won't get full marks. To get full marks, you need to talk about that demerit goods have an external cost, and the fact that social cost is more than private cost, and that for merit goods the social benefit is more than private benefit. Now अभी हम पढ़ते हैं social benefit, private benefit क्या होता है. देखें, सबसे पहले समझते हैं कि इकोनॉमिस्ट जो होते हैं वो खाली ये नहीं देखते कि कॉस्ट क्या है, how much is the cost for me, but they'll also consider the impact of my decisions on a lot of other people, right, and to the society as a whole. So they say that, okay, fine, for an economic activity could be anything. I'm eating I buy a chocolate and I start eating it, or I have a cup of coffee. That's an economic activity as well. So the social cost, or the cost to society, would be the private cost. That is the cost that is incurred. Private cost is basically the cost that is incurred by individuals or firms or the government, whoever is party to the transaction, whoever is doing the transaction. So, for example, if let's say that you are enrolled, let's say in a program, in a school program, so the monthly fee that you're paying, or let's say that the fuel cost that you're incurring, that's a private cost, and the external cost could possibly be because of you enrolling into some. और खैर external cost तो यहाँ पे इतनी fit in नहीं हो रही इस example में, थोड़ी सी example मुझे change करनी पड़ेगी actually. Let's talk about you consuming unhealthy food. And if you're consuming unhealthy food and you're doing all sorts of things that you shouldn't be doing, then the private cost could be the cost of consuming that, maybe the fuel cost, the cost of the purchase cost and all of that. Well, the external cost is the cost that is imposed on people around you who really weren't really doing that thing, but they got affected. For example, if you're smoking, so an external cost of smoking would be passive smoking. People around you are affected. And don't just think that it ends there only. It has a long-term effect. These external costs are immediate, and then there are subsequent long-term as well. And long-term external costs आपकी पूरी economy को face करनी पड़ती है. If a lot of people are not taking care of their health, if they're not taking care of their diet, if they're not consuming healthy food, they're consuming a lot of alcohol, they're consuming all sorts of drugs and stuff like that, things that they shouldn't be doing. It's not that they are only the ones who are getting affected, but their families getting affected emotionally, mentally, financially. And you see, let's say if I am a teacher and I consume things that I shouldn't be consuming, so it will affect my mental health, and my mental health will affect the way I teach, and the way I teach will affect your grades, and your grades will determine your career, and the cycle could go on and on. And maybe I end up saying something that I shouldn't be saying, and that affects your day, and then your day affects the way you treat your friends that day, and so it goes on and on. This is all external cost. And so plus that, the fact that people would end up overall the economy would end up having a high death rate because of consuming these unhealthy products like cigarettes and alcohol, could put significant burden and strain on the economy's healthcare systems. And that's an external cost as well. And then the government would probably need to increase tax rates on the working population and come up with a fiscal strategy or probably they might need to borrow money to do something about, maybe import more medicines, there are a lot of things that you can think of, and this is all external costs. And do you really think that the cost of consuming cigarettes and alcohol is only restricted to the private cost? No, that is why we say that is exactly why we are saying that demerit goods are creating welfare losses, because they're being overconsumed and overproduced, and the society as a whole is losing more than it is benefiting. So because it is creating a welfare loss on society, all of this will actually create welfare losses for society, because what it ends up doing is that it ends up creating outcomes for society that the society is probably not prepared and not ready for it, and it will have to deal shit then, because the government will probably need to go to the IMF or borrow money to or maybe need to because putting a lot of burden on healthcare systems means that you don't have enough hospital beds, you don't have enough doctors, and then the government needs to do you're putting unnecessary pressure on, or a burden on, your developing poor shitty country that it needs to deal with. So you see how interesting economics could get, and this is what external cost is, right? So बाकी ये लिखा है मैंने, gambling, sugary drinks, unhealthy sugary drinks are all examples of demerit goods. And the problem is that when you say that, these demerit goods should be, the price of these demerit goods should be higher than what it should be. These demerit goods should be taxed and they should be expensive. And the point is that, the consumers are creating an external cost by consuming them, right? And the producers aren't doing a good job either by producing them. But since the producers will produce them because consumers want them, because there's consumer sovereignty and resource allocation flows in the direction of consumer preferences, so the market economic system will produce it. And it will produce it as much as what consumers want and how much they want. So then the state needs to do something about it. Then the state says, okay, fine, I mean, then pay for it. हमें जो ये आपका हेल्थ केयर सिस्टम जो आप डैमेज करोगे एंड यू नो यू एंड अप flooding into hospitals with lung cancers and all of that, we don't have enough doctors and hospital beds. We need then pay taxes. Then we'll make these demerit goods expensive for you so that you don't end up buying it. But वो आएगा government intervention में, how the government. So point is primarily the demerit goods are being overproduced and overconsumed. And इसका अगर आप diagram बनाना चाहें, I mean you could actually make a demand supply diagram as well, and where you could say A2 के live sessions बिल्कुल इसके इंशाल्लाह भी announce मैं कर दूंगा लेकिन वो April में planned है. Demand and supply. So for example, if this is the market for demerit goods, so this is the demand. This is what the demand should be. I mean Q1 is what the quantity should be, but you're actually demanding Q2, and the market is producing Q2, right? So this is all over consumption and overproduction of demerit goods. Demerit goods are being overconsumed and overproduced beyond the society's optimum level. Society का optimum level is Q1. देखिए हम ये नहीं कह रहे कि demerit goods आप बिल्कुल ही produce ना करो, हम उनकी overproduction, overconsumption, because demerit goods is also a source of tax revenue. The industry is a source of tax revenue and employment as well. Similarly, when we talk about merit good, guys, merit goods is basically, I mean, in order to understand merit goods, we need to sort of understand social benefits. And social benefit, just like social cost, is a total benefit to society, which is the sum of private benefit and external benefit, right? So social benefit is simply total benefit to society, which is the sum of private benefit and external benefit. And one of the ways in order to understand this is, for example, like, you know, I have been wanting to get back into my fitness routine and take a walk every day, and probably, you know, but I haven't been doing that because although I know it's beneficial for me, but then I'm not doing that because of I don't really know how beneficial it could be. And consumers are informationally paralyzed. I mean, they are not able to think rationally when it comes to decision making. And this is all behavioral economics that we're talking about. Point is that what you're trying to say is that, I mean, information failure का मतलब क्या होता है? Information failure का मतलब खाली ये नहीं होता कि you don't really have the information. Information failure means that you have distorted information, incomplete information, even misunderstood information is what information failure is. So, and plus, so exactly, I do know it's beneficial for me, but I exactly don't know how beneficial it could be. Or I can't really see the long-term benefit. I can see it, but I can't really see it happening right now. And that is why probably I might not go to the gym and pay a very high fee for the gym or hire a personal trainer, because that would be expensive. Although, so the value that I am placing on merit goods is low. Halake, getting a personal trainer probably and going to the gym and hitting the gym every day, or eating healthy food, although it's expensive, but then eating it would probably give me a lot of health benefits, but probably I'm not even aware of, or even if I'm aware of, I'm not fully aware of. But it's not, the benefit is not restricted to me only. It's restricted to a lot. It just goes on and on. There are external benefits as well. And so if it is, then it's fine that these merit goods, I mean, then pay the price. So point is that I'm not valuing it as it should be. And since the demand is less for these merit goods than what it should be, these merit goods are always being underprovided and underproduced and underconsumed in society, right? Below the socially optimum level. And so we say that, you know, merit goods are those goods that provide more benefits than what consumers realize, which leads to underconsumption, right? And so social benefit is basically the sum of private benefit and external benefit. And private benefit is a benefit to the individual or the firm or the government directly involved in the transaction, right? For example, if the government is building a highway, so the private benefit for the government could be maybe it sort of generates toll taxes or some sort of revenue to the government that it could use. And external benefit could be that it generates employment and it probably increases the value of the land, and probably it results into some ancillary firms setting nearby, or it results into maybe a restaurant opening because of the development that is taking place. So that these are all external benefits, right, for a government producing and constructing a highway. So it's not just restricted to consumers consuming merit goods, right? Having said that, external benefit is, so point is, if I take care of my health, it's not only I will benefit, but you will benefit as well. I'll be mentally healthy. I'll be able to teach better. I'll be more productive, right? I'll be able to teach better, probably teach topics that in ways that I probably might not know myself. So who's benefiting? You will benefit as well, just because I will go to the gym. But the point is that external benefit की definition होती है that benefit to the third person who does not pays for that benefit. But the point is that I can't go on and say, oh, you know what, guys, you know what, I am going to the gym and you will benefit, so please help me contribute to the monthly fee that I'm paying to the gym. That doesn't. So as in, point is that you will receive a benefit, but you're not going to pay for that benefit. You're not going to contribute to the monthly gym fee. It's a free ka benefit. But then the price mechanism says free ka benefit. I mean, price mechanism says we don't give a shit about that. I mean, we don't give a shit about external benefits. We don't give a shit about external cost. We only give a damn about private benefit, private cost. And if something is beneficial to produce and provide it because consumers like it, we'll provide it if it's more than the cost of making it. Well, the consumers would think that if it's beneficial for us, then we'll consume it. If it's benefiting us more than the cost, it's costing us. I mean, you see, the reason why people smoke is because mentally or unconsciously, what are they doing? A smoker is valuing the benefit that he receives from smoking versus the cost. He's like, oh, you know what? A cigarette packet would cost me, let's say, $100 versus I'm going to be mentally satisfied. Although he's in a delusion, he's delulu, whatever you want to call it, but still in his mind, that's his private benefit. So he's weighing up the private benefit with the private cost, right? Like cigarettes are smoked to reduce. Exactly. So regardless of knowing about the risk of cancer. And so the risk of cancer, like you said, is not immediate, it's subsequent, right? But so risk of cancer, it's a risk of cancer. Probably I might not even have cancer, but there's a risk, but then I might not. And since I might not, since it's not definite, so this is information failure, distorted information, not having 100% correct information. And that is why we see I will end up probably consuming it. So you see how things are connected. The reason मैं इसको इतना deep लेके जा रहा हूँ, I could just give on the definition, wind it up quickly, but I just want you to understand it because that is how I like teaching it. Because जब तक मैं concept को नहीं समझाऊंगा, मुझे मज़ा नहीं आएगा. Or right? So got it? So I hope you guys are understanding the concept, and if yes, then please let me know. So market failure के दो primary types हैं आपके जो आपको पता होने चाहिए. Demerit goods being overconsumed in a market beyond socially optimum level, while merit goods being underconsumed in a market below socially optimum level. देखिए मैंने यहाँ पे पूरा लिखा हुआ भी है that why are merit goods actually underconsumed, and what I've said is that merit goods are basically underproduced and underconsumed because the external benefit is not factored in, right? It's not factored in. Why? Because you see, I mean, do you really think that everyone goes to the gym? Do you really think that our parents in the age of 50s and 60s hit the gym? Although they should. They take very good care of our health. We all end up eating healthy food. Or maybe do you see that our parents are also taking some sort of life courses and life lessons and taking some sort of, or reading self-help books, which will benefit them even for us. But we don't do that because, again, information failure. Number two, external benefits is not being factored in because reading self-help books or taking care of our health would not only benefit us, but to others around us as well. And because consumers and producers are selfish individuals, and the market mechanism or the free markets work based on self-interest, what interests me and how much is it beneficial for me. I will weigh up my cost against my benefit. And so if the benefit is more than the cost, I will buy it or consume it. But then I should consume more of it because there's an external benefit as well. But I'm like, oh, I don't care about the external benefit, right? And if everyone thinks that way, we see that merit goods are being underconsumed and underproduced, right? So ये reason. And एक दफ़ा एक student ने मुझसे पूछा कि sir exactly what is the socially optimum level? So the socially optimum level is basically the level of output where welfare is maximized, right? So it's a more hypothetical sort of way of saying it, that, right? It's not a fixed number. तीसरा market failure बहुत important है, and that is non-provision of public goods. And there's a complete missing market for it. You see, public goods are those goods. अब बच्चे जनरली पब्लिक गुड्स के बारे में एग्जाम में जब लिख कर आएंगे, सो दिल स्टार्ट ऑफ बाय सेइंग पब्लिक गुड्स आर प्रोवाइडेड बाय द गवर्नमेंट, दे आर फ्री. सबसे पहले आप डेफिनेशन दें कि पब्लिक गुड्स आर बेसिकली गुड्स दैट आर नॉन एक्सक्लूडेबल, नॉन राइवल्डस. Public goods की definition is the characteristic itself. So you talk about their non-excludability, non-rivalry. And public goods non-excludable होते हैं, ये उनकी characteristic है कि non-excludability means that once provided, no one can be excluded from using it. For example, street lights. For example, flood defense. For example, beaches and parks. These are all public goods, right? And non-rivalrous का मतलब है roads. These are public goods as well. Non-rivalrous का मतलब है that once you are using it, the consumption doesn't really goes down. And for example, जैसे कि अगर मैं अभी बात करूँ आपसे कि अभी मेरी लाइव स्ट्रीम जितना आप मेरी लाइव स्ट्रीम देख के बेनिफिट हासिल कर रहे हैं, उतना ही बेनिफिट कोई और भी हासिल करेगा या कर रहा होगा जब वो देख रहा होगा या देख रहा है. आपके मेरी लाइव स्ट्रीम देखने से वो घर पे बैठ के कितना सीख रहा है वो अफेक्ट नहीं हो रहा. जितना आप सीख रहे हैं उतना वो भी सीख रहा है, राइट? लेकिन if I am having a chocolate or I'm having a cup of coffee and then I have half of it, then only half of it is available for you. But that's a private good, and this is actually a good thing, because good thing in the sense that if I pay for that chocolate, it's my chocolate, and it's rivalrous because if I consume it, then nothing is left for you because it's not yours. But if I pay for a public good, if I pay for a good that is non-rivalrous, then if I consume it, then you will also get the same benefit out of it. Firstly, I can't really exclude you from consuming it. Neither I could say that neither if you consume it, the benefit would be less for me, neither it would be less for you. So, non-excludability, non-rivalrous होते हैं ये दो characteristics. And the point is that why would the private sector end up producing goods that are non-excludable and non-rivalrous? Because there won't be any, although there is demand, but consumers won't end up buying it. Do you see, देखें, I mean, have we really purchased street lights outside our house and installed it? No, the government does it. We pay taxes, but not everyone pays taxes, right? Because if I install a street light outside my house and pay money for it, I can't stop you from using it. I can't stop my neighbors from using it. And the amount of benefit that I will derive from it is the same that they will derive from it, right? And so it follows that if everyone has to derive the same benefit and I can't exclude it, then why should I even pay for it? And if everyone thinks the same way, the demand is not really registered in the market and the producers don't end up producing it. And that is why we see that in a market economic system, private sector firms do not produce public goods. It's the government that provides public goods in a market economy or in a free market. I mean, in a market system, the government ends up providing public goods and street lights and flood defense and, public parks and beaches. Now, public parks or beaches or roads, ये भी public goods हैं, लेकिन ये 100% public goods नहीं है. खैर अभी इस डिटेल में हम नहीं जा रहे, लेकिन आप बेसिक समझ लें कि ये आप A levels में पढ़ेंगे आगे जाके कि आप किसी रोड पे तो किसी को you can't really exclude people from using the road unless and until you ask them to pay some sort of a toll tax. But roads could be considered and public beaches could be or parks could be considered rivalrous, because once the road is congested and there's a lot of traffic, right, then you will not get the same benefit as others are getting because of the traffic congestion. So that is why roads are public goods, beaches are public goods, public parks are public goods, but they're not the perfect example of what public goods are, because they do demonstrate and exhibit characteristics of some sort of rivalry in them. Although they are non-excludable, you can't really stop anyone from entering a public park, but then, they are to an extent, they are rivaled, especially when you have a lot of people that the park is crowded, the traffic is congested, the roads are congested. So market failure public goods में क्यों होता है? Because of the free rider problem. Free rider problem का मतलब ये है कि भाई मैं street light नहीं लगवा रहा because I just want a free ride on someone else's consumption. I want my neighbor to do it, and my neighbor think that he will do it, and he will think that he will do it, and then no one ends up doing it. This is the free rider problem, because individuals want so why public goods में market failure क्यों arise होता है? Because of the free rider problem. That everyone would want a free ride on someone else's money, right? On someone else's consumption. So यही चीज़ मैंने यहाँ पे लिखी हुई भी है. Once आपको पता है live stream के बाद I will upload these notes probably by tomorrow, so you can access the files from the link that is provided in the description of this video. ठीक है. आखिरी चीज़, आखिरी market failure, second last market failure आप देख लें, that it talks about this is another market failure. That why do we say that markets are failing? Because although markets are efficient, but the point is that what's the point of efficiency when the world wouldn't be the same as it is, right? So we know in the past decade how have climate been a serious issue, right? And that is all because of what we have done in the past 2 centuries to the world, right? Pollution from factories, carbon emissions, toxic waste, toxic gases. देखिए ये examples मैंने जानबूझ के लिखी हैं, I mean purposely लिखी हैं, because खाली ये कहना कि environment को damage होता है is a broad term. उसको narrow down करो, examples दो. Dumping of chemical waste in rivers. I mean, we see all of that happening. Firms do that. And the point is that firms get away with it. Firms get away with it in a market system. Unless and until laws and regulations know that strictly prohibits private sector. But since it's a free market, the private sector is free to do that at the expense of the environment. So there has to be a middle ground. And we'll study that how could government stop this from happening, or not stop this, but mitigate the effects. And so the firms produce goods at a lower cost, but they do not pay the environment. I mean, you are producing the goods at such a low cost, ऊपर से तुम लोगों को production भी इतनी करनी है, and then you want to make profits as well, then end up pay for the environmental damage that you're doing then. But again, since it's a free market, it will result into market failure, and you will not end up paying for that environmental damage, and you'll basically get. That is why we're saying it's an undesirable outcome. I mean, in order to set up a chemical plant, you are setting it up close to a river because you need a drainage, and you're throwing all that waste in the river. That is harming the fishes. Fishes are a source of income for fishermen. That's an external cost. The water is being affected. The water was a source of tourist attraction. Tourist attraction means foreign currency. Current account में balance of trade में record होता है. All of this is affected. So this is all external cost. And so what we see is that what's really happening is that firms don't, firms consider only the private costs, such as they only consider the raw material cost, the energy cost, the labor cost, while they ignore the external costs like pollution, deforestation. I mean, deforestation के कितने नुकसान आते हैं? जो extreme weather conditions हैं, extreme heat, extreme cold, ये सब इस वजह से है. Deforestation resulting into environmental damages and climate change. Sea levels rise हो रहे हैं, global warming हो रही है, extreme weather events हो रहे हैं, no one gives a damn. ठीक है, ये market failure है. पॉइंट क्या है कि जब हम ये मुझसे किसी ने एक दफ़ा सवाल पूछा था कि व्हाट डू यू रियली मीन बाय व्हेन आई वाज टीचिंग इन क्लास, सो समवन आस्क्ड मी कि व्हाट डू यू रियली मीन बाय फर्म्स नॉट हाउ आर फर्म्स कंट्रीब्यूटिंग. सो बेसिकली देखें, ये जिस तरह एग्जांपल लिखी है कि फर्म्स आर ओवर प्रोड्यूसिंग गुड्स, ऑल सॉर्ट्स ऑफ गुड्स दे आर ओवर प्रोड्यूसिंग. They extract raw materials at unsustainable rates. They cause soil erosion. It disrupts the entire ecosystem. There's no proper recycling incentives. It results into landfill waste. Landfill waste is a place where you dump all your trash, right? It creates ocean pollution. These are all problems, right? And iska result kya hota hai? It results into society suffering a welfare loss due to profit motive, right? And that is why it necessitates government intervention to force firms, or the government forces them to internalize these externalities. But the point is that in a free market economy, the government does not intervene. The government intervenes in very minimalistic ways, like light touch regulations, and the government is primarily responsible for maintaining law and order, looking at the national defense of the country, protecting property rights, providing public goods as well, but not on. The government will not intervene to an extent that they can't really say to the producers that do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. It can't really impose heavy taxes on them, right? It can't impose price controls. It can't really say that, you know what, you're overcharging consumers, you need to reduce the price. It can't say that in a free market economy. That's not how free markets work. That is why we should have an economic system where the governments also can have the power to intervene in private sector markets, and it could restrict the producers how they're creating undesirable outcomes. एक आखिरी market failure है, उसके बाद I'll take the questions. A question आया हुआ है, I'll explain the free market problem again, don't worry. So abuse of monopoly power is, monopolies are basically your firms dominating the market, right? And we know that how firms could, although see, in a market economic system, there's a lot of competition. In market economics jo hoti hai, it encourages competition, it beats competition and all of that. But we assume that there's a lot of competition. It could possibly be that there is, possibly some firms might end up dominating the market, or possibly for some firms there might not be competition. Probably you just have a single producer producing, that particular, or the single industry producer, for example. खैर अभी मैं इसको क्या बोलते क्या है, मैं इस पर नहीं जा रहा, वो फिर A levels की तरफ निकल जाएगी बात. लेकिन what I'm saying is that producers can exploit this dominance by charging very high prices, right? Or probably not giving a damn about investing in research and development to benefit from economies of scale. Because you see, monopolies are large firms. They are sitting with huge profits. They could invest those in research and development and coming up with technology initiatives and all of that. And that will significantly drive down their average cost. And that would mean that that could translate into lower prices for consumers. If they're able to come up with efficient ways of production, or which is basically productive efficiency, if the output becomes productively efficient, that could translate into lower prices for consumers. And consumers would benefit. जैसे कि किसी स्टूडेंट ने कहा भी था कि मोनोपलीज क्या बेनिफिशियल कैसे होती हैं कंज्यूमर्स के लिए. ऐसे बेनिफिशियल होती हैं कि मोनोपलीज could charge lower prices as well, especially if they reinvest their profits into research, development, technological innovations, because that will significantly reduce their average cost. In fact, आज ही मैं October-November 24 का एक पेपर करा रहा था. उसमें एक सवाल था कि उसमें what really happens during dynamic efficiency. But the monopolies could basically lead to dynamic efficiency. And dynamic efficiency is just when, let's say, your average cost basically falls. So let's say if you're producing Q1 units and the average cost was initially $5 per unit, and now you could end up producing it at half the price, $2.5 per unit. This is your average cost. Average cost is cost per unit, right? So this could happen. Monopolies could end up doing that. But for this to happen, for dynamic efficiency to happen, you need to be a large firm, and only monopolies are large. And this is one of the disadvantages as well जो हम पढ़ते हैं small large firms का difference आता है past papers में, कि small firms don't really have that benefit, particular benefit. So monopolies का दूसरा मसला ये है कि they end up, if there are 2-3 firms and those 2-3 firms are dominating the market, they have that market dominance, they could basically collude. इसको कहते हैं price collusion. They could fix prices, right? Or maybe they could impose artificial barriers to entry for new firms, just like Meta has been accused for doing that. Just eats up all other sort of competition like a shark hunting in the ocean of hunting fish, right? So that's not good because consumers की choice restrict होती है इससे, ठीक है? अभी किसी क्वेश्चन, सो वी आर डन विद मार्केट फेलियर. अब हमारी कल एक और लाइव स्ट्रीम है, उसमें हम करेंगे गवर्नमेंट इंटरवेंशन. इसमें हम टैक्सेस के डायग्राम देखेंगे, सब्सिडीज़ के प्रोज एंड कॉन्स, प्राइस कंट्रोल्स, मिनिमम मैक्सिमम प्राइसेस, and these rules and regulations that the government could do to probably control monopolies or come up with environmental laws. So government intervention is a government's way to correct this market failure, mitigate market failure. Student ने क्वेश्चन पूछा हुआ है, काइंडली एक्सप्लेन द फ्री राइडर प्रॉब्लम. फ्री राइडर प्रॉब्लम इज अ प्रॉब्लम वेयर free rider means that you want a free ride on someone else who has paid for it. So if someone installs something, let's say a street light, textbook example is street light. So if someone installs street lights and outside his house, then you would want to you will also consume it, because although you haven't really paid for it, but you would want to consume it because you can't be excluded. It's not that I could say that, okay, fine, I'm closing the street light when you are at home, or either end up paying for it. So it's not going to work that way. And so you would want to, so the fact that you would want to consume it free of cost is the free rider problem. And I know that there's a free rider problem involved and you would end up consuming it. And so why should you benefit for it, for which that you're not paying for it? And so if I think the same way and you think the same way, then there's no street lights in our neighborhood. Then the government has to do something and provide them. And the government does provide them then. One of us have actually went in the market. Let's go. Have you ever seen or heard that, oh, where are you? Hey, dad, where are you? Oh, actually, I'm actually just getting a street light for our house. So that's what the free rider problem is. I hope I've answered the question. Yes, guys. Are we good? Anything else? देखें, ये क्लासेस लाइव अटेंड मैं आपको सजेस्ट करूँगा कि इसको लाइव अटेंड करने का फ़ायदा ये होता है कि आप उसी वक्त एक आपका टेम्परामेंट बना रहता है. उसी वक्त आप पढ़ रहे हैं, उसी वक्त you're making sure that your brain works fast, so you copy the stuff down and then you could ask questions. So coming week में हम गवर्नमेंट इंटरवेंशन करेंगे. उसके बाद मेरा प्लान है कि आई डू सम डिफिकल्ट टॉपिक्स ऑफ मैक्रो लाइक इन्फ्लेशन और maybe exchange rates and I don't know, deflation or policy, something like that. But that depends on what you guys say. Market failure, Instagram पे एक बहुत common request थी, बार आ रही थी, market failure कराएं. तो इसलिए मैंने cover किया था based on what you guys had told me or asked me to do. Anything else, guys? तो कोई और क्वेश्चन है किसी का? Can we say merit goods like going to gym is under consumers? I will only go to gym with person. हाँ, तो yes, for that is exactly why you will end up going to the gym, for your own personal gains, personal benefit. Yes. Okay, so I think that's it for today, and I'll be ending the live stream here, and I'll see you all in the next live stream, which is, by the way, tomorrow. We're going to be doing government intervention, and that will be an important one. Uska past paper question aata hai 6 marks ka bhi, 8 marks ka bhi. Okay, guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you in that video. Until then, take care.